Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Batra, page 168. A, top of the page, with the words Kevan Shehigid Shuv Eno Choser Umagid, Surva Me Rabbanan Lav Orche Lemedak. Once one has stated his testimony, he may not then state a revision. This case of Rabbi Yirmiyah is an exception, and he can retract his initial statement in which he supported the woman's claim. The reason that it is not the manner of a Torah scholar to be careful about identifying women for reasons of modesty. It is not the manner of a Torah scholar to be careful about identifying women for reasons of modesty. Ahu tavara tahavi chasim ale Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba amrle lavana havi Amarle avira antavat Amar Abaye afal gav tzur mirabanan lav orche lemedak kevan didak dak. The Gemara relates there was a certain receipt of payment for a marriage contract upon which Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba was signed. A woman whose name appeared on the receipt, who was seeking to collect payment of her marriage contract, said to him, "It was not I, but another woman with the same name, who had this receipt written." He said to her, "But it was you, and you are lying now." Abaye said, "Although I said that it is not the manner of a Torah scholar to be careful about identifying a woman, once he is careful about such an identification and states positively that he recognizes a particular woman, he is careful." Amar Abaye, Hai Tzura Mirabanan Da'azol Kadoshi Itita Nidbar Am Ha'aretz Be'adeh Dilma Mechalfu Le'e Mine. Abaye said, a Torah scholar who goes to betroth a woman should take an ignoramus with him to establish a positive identity of the woman, lest people exchange another woman for her when given to him for marriage, taking advantage of his innocence. V'abal nosin zachar ma'itayma de'amar kra v'kasav v'nasan ha'idna delo avdina hachi shadyuhu rabbanan aisha kihechi dela l'shayhe. The Mishnah teaches that the husband gives the scribe's wages for writing a bill of divorce. The Gemara asks, what is the reason for this? The Gemara answers, as the verse states, when a man takes a wife and marries her, and it comes to pass, if she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found some unseemly matter in her, he shall write her a scroll of severance and give it in her hands. Deuteronomy 24:1. It is therefore the husband's responsibility to have the bill of divorce written. The Gemara adds, but today the reason that we do not do so, but instead have the woman pay the scribe, is that the sages placed the burden upon the woman so that the husband should not delay the divorce by refusing to pay the scribe. The Mishnah teaches a scribe may write a promissory note for a debtor who requests one, even if the creditor is not with him. And it is the debtor who gives the scribe his wages. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that the debtor pays the wages? After all, he is the beneficiary of the loan. The Gemara answers, no. It is necessary for the Mishnah to state this, as there are times when the loan is beneficial to the creditor as well, as in a case of a joint venture where the creditor receives a share of the profits engendered by the money provided to the borrower. See Bava 104a. Kois finshtar lamoicher, hava pishe ein lokeach. וכולי. פשיטה לא הצריכה במויכר שדהו בפני rasa. The Mishnah teaches a scribe may write a bill of sale for a seller of property who requests one, even if the purchaser is not with him when he presents his request, and it is the purchaser who provides the scribe's wages. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that the purchaser pays the wages? After all, he is the beneficiary of the sale. The Gemara answers, no. It is necessary for the Mishnah to state this, as sometimes the sale is beneficial to the seller as well, as in the case of one who sells a field because of its poor quality, as he is anxious to be rid of it. In koisvin shtare erosin pshita loy tzricha tafil tzorve mirabanan denichale lachamu lekorve. The Mishnah teaches a scribe may not write documents of betrothal and documents of marriage except with the consent of both the groom and the bride, and it is the groom who provides the scribe's wages. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that the groom pays the wages? After all, he is the one acquiring his betrothed. The Gemara answers, no. It is necessary for the Mishnah to state this to teach us that it applies even when the groom is a Torah scholar, in which case it gives his father-in-law satisfaction to bring him into his family by having him marry his daughter. Even in such a case, where the bride's family is a beneficiary, it is the groom who pays the wages. Ein koisen shtar arisus ekavlanus pshita loy tzricha bevura. The Mishnah teaches a scribe may not write contracts for sharecroppers and contractors except with the consent of both parties, meaning the sharecropper or contractor and the one who hires him. And it is the sharecropper or contractor who provides the scribe's wages. The Gemara asks, isn't it obvious that the contractor pays the wages? After all, the contract details his rights to the field. The Gemara answers, no. It is necessary for the Mishnah to state this, as sometimes the deal is detrimental to the contractor, as in the case of a fallow field. It might have been thought that in this case the cost of the document is borne by the landowner. Ein koisin shtari beurin elavidas shneim ma shtari beurin hachatargimu shtari tanasa Rav Yehushua Bava Amar ze boire lo echad v'ze boire lo echad. The Mishnah teaches the scribe may not write documents testifying to arbitration of any other court enactment except with the consent of both parties to the litigation. The Gemara asks, what is meant by documents testifying to arbitration? Here in Babylonia, the sages interpreted it to mean documents recording the claims of the two parties to the litigation. Of Yirmiyah, Bava says a document testifying to arbitration is one that records the procedure in which the composition of the court is chosen and described in Tractate Sanhedrin 23a, whereby this litigant chooses one judge, and the litigant chooses one judge, and these two judges choose the third one. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel oimer. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Shneim kosvin shnayim, ze atzma. V'lema b'choifin al midas toim, the Mishnah teaches that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says the scribe writes two documents for the two parties, one for this, one by himself, one for that, one by himself. The Gemara analyzes the disagreement between Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and the first Tana, who did not call for two separate documents. Shall we say that they disagree with regard to the principle that the court coerces people to prevent conduct characteristic of Sodom, meaning selfish behavior? That is the case that the case is where one of the litigants does not want to contribute the writing of a joint document and insists that each litigant pay to have his own document written, which would entail an additional expenditure on the part of the other party. Demar Sofer Koifin, Umar Sofer Ein Koifin. The dispute is then as follows. As one sage, the first Tana holds that the court coerces people to prevent this conduct. So the obstinate litigant is forced to pay his share of a joint document. And one sage, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, holds that the court does not coerce people to prevent this conduct, and a litigant can insist upon paying only for a document of his own. Lo, dechuli amni koifin, yihacha hainu taima de Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, de amar le, lo nichali, de sehevi zichusach, gabe zichuti, de damis alai ki aria arba. The Gemara rejects this analysis. No, everyone in the Mishnah holds that the court coerces people to prevent conduct, characteristic of Sodom. And here, this is the reason for the ruling of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, is because the litigant demanding separate documents is not making a pointless, selfish request at all. As he says to the other litigant, it is not amenable for me that your defense, meaning your record, the record of your claim, should be together with my defense, as you are to me like an ambushing lion, meaning our interests are in conflict. And now we start a new Mishnah. Misha para miktas chayvoi ve'ashlish eshtari amar lo im lo nasati lecha mikan v'ad yom ploni ten lishtarai agiyazman v'lo nasan Rabbi Yossi Omer yitain Rabbi Yehuda Omer lo yitain. In the case of a debtor who repaid part of his debt and with the agreement of the creditor deposited the promissory note with a third party, serving as a trustee to ensure that the creditor would not collect the full amount, and the debtor said to the trustee, if I have not given you the balance from now until such and such a day, give the creditor his promissory note, thereby enabling him to collect the full amount stated on the note. If the stipulated time arrived and the debtor did not give the balance to the trustee, Rabbi Yossi says the trustee should give the promissory note to the creditor in accordance with the debtor's stipulation. Rabbi Yehuda says the trustee should not give it, as the stipulation is void. Zog de Gemara. B'mayka miflagi, Rabbi Yossi Sofer asmach lekanya, Rabbi Yehuda Sofer asmach lo kanya. With regard to what principles Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda disagree, Rabbi Yossi holds that a transaction with inconclusive consent affects acquisition. In this case, the debtor willingly undertook a penalty if he would not repay the remainder of the debt on time. Yet he did not think that he would miss the deadline and be held accountable to pay that penalty. Rabbi Yossi holds that he is nevertheless bound by his word. Rabbi Yehuda holds that an asmachta does not affect acquisition; it is not binding. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravu, Amar Rav, Halacha Rabbi Yossi, Ki Asal Kamitz Rabbi Ami, Amar Lahu, V'chim Achar Shirabbi Yochanan Miladenu, Pam Rishona Ushnia Halacha Rabbi Yossi, Ani Ma Eseh. The Rav Nachman says that Rabba Baravu says that Rav says the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. When questioners came before Rabbi Ami inquiring of him what the halacha is in this matter, he said to him, but since it is the case that Rabbi Yochanan taught us a first time and a second time, repeatedly, that the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, what can I do to contradict his words? Ve'ein halacha Yossi, the Gemara concludes, but in fact, the halacha is not in accordance with the opinion of Yossi, as an asmachta is not binding. New Mishnah. Mi shenim chak shtar choyvoi ma'amid Allah v'edim uva lefnei bezdin ve'osin lo kiyom ish ploni ben ploni nimchak shtar b'yom ploni. In case of a creditor whose promissory note has become erased, he should produce witnesses who remember the details of the document to testify about it, and they come before the court and they ratify his promissory note for him, stating the promissory note of so and so was erased, and it stated that a loan for such and such an amount took place on such and such a date.